If you'll just wave, there are lead elementary counselors for the district. And we have Priscilla Bagley here from ChildBuilders, who will share a little bit more about ChildBuilders and this curriculum. But the purpose is to give you guys just an overview of what's to come and allow you to be able to ask questions, after the presentation for anything that you have about this curriculum or ChildBuilders itself. And so we're so glad to have Priscilla here, and we'll go ahead and get started. So Anna, if you don't mind presenting. Also, we will be recording this presentation, so just keep that in mind, but you will have access to it afterwards. That's something that Anna will share with you guys, and you can review it at another time.
Great. You ready for me to start?
Yes.
This is a great group. It's so wonderful to see so many people involved and here. We do a lot of webinars, so sometimes I present to one or two or to many, and this seems like a great group. So I am excited to be here. I work for ChildBuilders. I've worked on and off for ChildBuilders about 10 years. My career started in education. I was a pre-K and then a kindergarten teacher in Fort Bend ISD. So I'm sure you all are familiar, the whole Sugar Land, Fresno, Missouri City, that whole area, Richmond. And I loved it. I love teaching. But then my husband and I moved to Kentucky, and I started doing children's ministry at a church. And when we came back, I wasn't sure if I was ready to go back in the classroom or what I was doing. And I found ChildBuilders, which was this beautiful merging of all the things that I love, which is teaching kids, but training counselors and teachers, educators, and then talking to parents. And since then, I've become a parent. And so ChildBuilders took on a whole new kind of meaning for me. So excited to have you all here. And I'm going to present to you today some information, one, about us as parents and how we can keep our kids safe, why that's important, but also how this program that honestly I've poured so many hours and hours and hours into, Stand Strong, Stay Safe, how that impacts our children and how that can impact your children while they're in Alvin ISD, right? So without further ado, this is, like I said, I work for ChildBuilders, and our mission is, you can go to the next slide, Miss Anna. Our mission is to promote mental health and prevent abuse by empowering children, parents, and teachers with assertiveness skills. That's such an important part of this whole curriculum, especially Stand Strong, is assertiveness skills, emotional control, again, a big part of Stand Strong. We'll talk about that. Empathy, resilience, and the ability to resolve conflict nonviolently. We are bought in at ChildBuilders to creating a world where kids are nurtured, protected, and safe. And that is a major part of Stand Strong, Stay Safe. All right, so next slide talks about how we have a 3-tiered approach, right? And I talked a little bit about this. We believe that children can have these skills. If children have skills to keep themselves safe, they are on a pathway to safer, more mentally healthy adulthood, right? And that also takes training parents, which is why we're here today. So congratulations to you all for loving kids, wanting the best for your children. And so we have things like parents workshops, webinars. I mentioned that at the beginning, that sometimes that's a big group. Sometimes it's just a few people. I teach on parenting with empathy, and we have mindfulness and all of these things. And keeping kids safe is another one I do, which is part of what we're going to talk about today. So if children have the skills, parents have the skills, and then the other side, which is all your wonderful counselors and teachers in Alvin. If educators have these skills, this information, and they can go in and teach our children how to be safe, then we've got that 3-tiered approach, and it's protecting a community, right? We're all on the same page as a community. And kudos to your counselors for wanting to do that, to say, hey, it's not just about us training kids, right? We're going to bring parents in on this. We want them to be part of that. And so we want you to be part of that today. And so I'm going to give you some more information about our safety programs, which is the next slide. So we have some social and emotional learning curricula. We have some healthy relationships. But the one we're talking about today, near and dear to my heart, is the safety program, which is called Stand Strong, Stay Safe, which your counselors have been trained in and your children will be receiving through, and hopefully you all can have more information and you can talk about these things too in your homes. So we have the early childhood version, which I'm going to do a piece of a lesson in a minute, and that involves our puppets. You're going to see here Bunny, Panda, and Puppy. And we talk to our students, our youngest students, about keeping themselves safe. And we use puppets and we use interactive lessons, and they practice these skills. And we do that all through a fun and sweet puppet show with our puppets. So that's our early childhood. Lower elementary, you're going to see here we use comic books. We use comic stories to talk to our students about how they can be superheroes in their own life, how they can be superheroes in their schools, and how they can be superheroes in their communities, in their homes, right? And we have our core concepts there, which is I deserve respect. I have the right to be safe. We all have the right to feel safe and to be safe. I have the power to choose, putting the ball in their court. Here's what's happening. What do I do from here? I will get help. And all of these programs are couched in, we talk about with students, if something happens, it is never our fault. It's okay to tell and get the help we need. And then our upper elementary is an extension of those lower elementary comics. And the students in the comics are facing different challenges and new adventures. So I'll go in a little bit more detail on that in just a minute. But the next slide talks about, so why is this important? And I don't think I knew as a parent before I started working at ChildBuilders why this is so important. I kind of grew up in a little bubble of safety, which is sweet and precious. And I wanted that for my child. But we live in a world that unfortunately things happen. And as parents, we want the best for our kids. We want them to be prepared when they go to school, right? So we do homework. We want our kids to be ready for a challenge in a sport. So we practice. It's the same thing. We want them to be ready to face the challenges. And we hope no one has deep trauma. No child. That's what ChildBuilders is working toward. This is what your counselors are working toward. We don't want trauma for our children. But if things happen, how can we be prepared and how can we talk to our children? And unfortunately, there's some statistics and you can go on. This comes from survivors.org. It's from the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control and Government. And it talks about how many victims. And there are, and when these statistics were taken, 683,000 victims of abuse in our country, right? And that's just the ones that are reported. So we know those numbers are much higher. And who are the most likely to be victimized? The young child, the child maybe with special needs. And we are spending billions and billions of dollars for the aftermath of what happens after trauma. But what if we got in there and what if we prevented trauma from happening? Just like we want for our children in life, we want them to be proactive, preventative. Like, what can we do to get ahead of this? And that's what Stand Strong is doing. So we're going to go on to the next slide. Just a little bit of research. And this has really informed our lessons on abuse and assertiveness, right? Because we know that confident, assertive children who have a strong social support network, that's you all parents and you teachers and our community and counselors, we know that that helps them to not be a desirable victim. So if someone's looking to victimize a child, they're going to look for a child that's not assertive, that's passive, that doesn't have strong connections, somebody to tell, somebody to get help, somebody who might keep things a secret. So we don't want that for our kids. We want to make them assertive. And that can be really hard. It can be hard. I grew up not being assertive. And so it's a skill that we can learn. I learned it in my 30s. I'm still practicing it. I'm still not great at it. I talk to my daughter all the time about it. And we still practice. We practice together, right? And so we know that sexual predators are more likely to target children who seem like they will not stand up for themselves and will not get help. Ties into that first one. Assertive kids who have help, who have a support system, are going to be less likely to be victimized. And that's what we want. We want to be preventative. We want our children to not be traumatized, to not be hurt. And then also just bullies in school. are also going to prefer a passive victim to assertive victims, because you think about it, you're not going to want to bully someone who can stand up for themselves, right? You're going to want to bully someone that you get some kind of satisfaction from bullying. But an assertive child is going to say, stop, I don't like that. And we're going to talk about how Stand Strong, Stay Safe teaches that and practices that skill with kids. All right, so our next piece. Research also shows that this is what we need for a great safety program. And so we tried to incorporate this in Stand Strong, Stay Safe in all aspects. Skill-based. So can we teach them something, and can we practice something with them? Taught more than once. Again, that is why we have an early childhood, lower elementary, upper elementary. We want to revisit these skills. It would be wonderful if we could teach this to them all the time. And that's why teaching counselors, teaching teachers, creating a school culture where these things are valued is so important, because your kids aren't going to just hear it once and forget it. It's the same thing with education. We don't want to just teach a math skill and then the next day move on to something else and never revisit it. You have to build on those skills. So we're going to teach it more than once. We're going to reinforce it with ongoing activities. We have follow-up activities. We have home connections for you parents to see what your child is doing and learning, and you can keep talking to them too about all these things. We want parental involvement. This is a great example today. Talking to parents, we want them to buy in and say, I'm going to do everything I can to help the school and help my kids stay safe. And then focused on assertive behavior, and we talked a lot about that already, that research shows that that is going to prevent trauma from happening. So the next one is our characters. These are our wonderful early childhood and elementary, upper and lower elementary characters. So our skills, core concepts for early childhood are, and we even go through this with our students, know if something's safe, be assertive, tell a safe grown-up you trust, keep telling until you get the help you need, and it's not your fault if someone hurts you. And we talk about that over and over and over again until our students have that reinforce it. It is never their fault. And we talk about who are the safe grown-ups in our life, who are safe grown-ups at school, who are safe grown-ups at home. And we go into pretty detail into that through our lessons of naming and talking about who are the adults in our lives who we can trust. What does it mean to trust? And then for our upper and lower elementary, I talked about these before. These are our superheroes. We have Ray, who is in the cape. We have Twist with the yellow outfit with the assertive stance. We've got Volt, the bunny, and Jumps, our little frog friend. And again, all of these characters encounter something that we tried to have our pulse on what kids are dealing with today. What are kids seeing? How are they feeling? What's going on in schools? And how can we show them how these normal kids can become superheroes? They can become superheroes. We all deserve respect, a right to be safe. We have power to choose, and we will get help when we need it. As a parent, I can tell you this is something I just talked to my daughter about yesterday. So there's constantly things happening in classrooms, right? We just can't be there 24/7 with our kids. But I talked to her about her assertiveness and how to get help and when she needs it. So again, these are things that we're talking about, and parents, you can talk about with your students too. So in Stand Strong Early Childhood, which is the next slide, our lessons are, we couch everything with assertiveness. And then that is in each of the lessons. We go back and talk about assertiveness. We have the power of kind words, keeping my body safe, stopping neglect and physical abuse. And so we're talking today about the last two lessons are lessons that parents have to opt in for their children to have. And they're amazing lessons taught in a very kid-friendly, developmentally appropriate way, talking about what are the ways I can keep my body safe. Again, surrounded by assertiveness, surrounded with getting help, and then stopping neglect and physical abuse. Again, we use the puppets, and I'm going to show you what the puppets are like. I'm going to give you just a preview of what lesson 1, assertiveness, looks like with our puppets. So I'm going to pretend you all are my students, and I'm going to act out just the story portion. There's so many more pieces to this lesson, but just the story portion. So, all right, so we're going to tell a story today, boys and girls, with our puppet friends. And this is all about what happened when one friend was not being kind. One day, Puppy and Bunny were sitting together, coloring, sharing a box of crayons. Bunny kept taking all the crayons, and Puppy really needed to use the crayon to color. Puppy reached over to take a crayon, but Bunny pulled the crayon out of Puppy's hand. Hey, that's mine. I need that crayon. But Bunny didn't really need the crayon. There were other crayons that Bunny could use. Puppy stopped working and tried not to cry. I wish I had a crayon. Well, you don't. And then we talked to the students about what's going on in the story and what they're seeing. And then we're going to have a time where Panda comes, and Panda knows about assertiveness. So Puppy and Bunny are coloring or not coloring, trying to color. Then Bunny went over to Puppy, took the crayon right out of Panda's hand, and Panda couldn't color anymore. But Panda had learned how to be assertive and remembers to stand tall, put shoulders back, look at the person you're talking to, speak with a strong, clear voice. And Panda said, "Stop. I don't like that. Give the crayon back." So that's just a preview. And then the story goes on to where Puppy learns assertiveness. And so we have our passive, aggressive, assertive characters, and they each learn how being assertive gets what they want and does it in a way that's respectful. And then it goes into what if there still wasn't a solution? What if Bunny kept all the crayons? Well, then Panda goes and talks to Penguin, who's the teacher, and Penguin makes the situation right. So again, I just had this conversation with my daughter. So learning that we can be assertive, we can solve problems for ourselves. And if that doesn't happen, remember, tell someone and keep telling. And it is never our fault if someone treats us unkindly, even if we've done something. And one of the lessons, the puppet is getting in trouble for not doing something right. But even then, it's not okay for someone to hurt you. They have choices and we have choices, right? We all have choices to be respectful, to be assertive. So again, that's just a small preview, but each of these lessons follows that very similar routine where we bring the puppets out. The students know the puppets. They end up loving the puppets. And then they had tell a story, and then we practice those skills over and over again. And our keeping body safe, we talk about how secrets are not safe, how we need to tell someone and we get help. Same for physical abuse and neglect. We can get help and we can be assertive. And we talk about what that looks like through each of these different topics. All right, so the next one I want to talk a little bit about, and any questions you have, we can come back. You can flip through to the next. There's our puppets. And then this is what our lower elementary looks like. So you're going to see through this curriculum, we've changed things a bit to kind of focus on what are our lower elementary, so second and third graders. What are they dealing with? How can we make these lessons be more effective for them? So we have be assertive, again, revisiting assertiveness, boundaries and consent, talking about what's crossing my line, and that's not okay. And I can say, I'm not comfortable with that. That's crossing my boundaries. Setting up a whole school culture of it's okay to say no to someone and to talk to them about their boundaries. It's also okay to maybe, and we talk about, hey, does everyone like to be hugged? Sometimes, maybe not everyone. Maybe it depends on the person who's hugging you. Is it okay if you said, okay, you can hug me, and then you decide, I don't really want a hug right now? Is it okay to say, withdraw your consent? No, I don't think I want that. And we say yes. And we actually have students practice asking and withdrawing consent. And then there's the physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse. And all of these are talked about in our Texas essential knowledge and skills, our TEKS, right? We want students to understand warning signs, what happens if they've been abused, and how to get help. Because, and we're going to talk about this in a minute, we know that the sooner children get help or tell someone, or if they're assertive, which is our number one priority, we would want them to be assertive, getting out of that situation and telling someone, we know that the trauma from abuse is much less if we go through those skills and we get help quickly. So there's our Stand Strong lower elementary. And I know I'm going through this quickly, but we'll have answers or questions in just a minute. Okay, so our upper looks again similar, but again, switching it up to have some different conflicts and some things kids are dealing with. So safe relationships, because we're kind of getting into that place right now where kids are deciding, who am I hanging out with? Is this person safe? What are my boundaries? What's safe to me? Emotional management, learning that we have the power to choose. And sometimes our emotions, which are good things, they can get out of control, right? And how do we manage that? How can we tell someone? How can we stop, breathe, and think to get back in control? Handling conflict. And then again, the stopping abuse and staying safe online, which as a parent is a huge concern for me often, is how can we talk to our kids about online safety, and how can we give them the skills and the knowledge to stay safe online, when it seems like that is a danger that's just very vague, right? It's not like, oh, stay away from that person who might be hurting you. It's, how do you know? What's a red flag, for safety? How do you know if someone's trying to trick you online? So all of those pieces. All right, so we're going to go to the next slide, and I believe this is going to be a clip. It's just short. It's one of our comic book stories. It's for boundaries and consent, and you'll kind of get the idea of what our superheroes go through when they turn from a regular kid into a superhero.
Jumps and Volt are friends and playing happily at Jumps' house, until one of them feels unsafe and not respected. Let's find out how they handle this situation. Man, Jumps is such a cool room. I hope Jumps doesn't want to wrestle. He always wrestles so rough. Last time, he left bruises on my body, and I really don't like that. I won!
Ha ha ha! Yeah! You beat me! Bet you won't win a wrestling match.
Ouch! That really hurts. Crossing my boundaries! Stop punching me!
I'm sorry. I didn't know I was hurting you.
Look, I like playing with you. I just don't like it when you leave bruises on my body.
Okay. I'll be more careful next time.
Thanks! Now let's get back to saving the world.
Yeah! So, tell me more about this boundary thing.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So as you saw in that video, we're not only just giving students the language in this curriculum to say things like, that's crossing my boundaries. It's funny. I was talking to the group, ChildBuilders, and thinking about how as a kid, I never even thought through those things, and most of the time I just thought, oh, it's making me uncomfortable, but they're my friend. Maybe it's okay. Maybe I don't say anything, or even giving it some thought. What are things that I like that my friends do? What are some things I don't like? And it's okay for me to say, I really don't like to play that way. Let's do something else. And so it's just giving our kids, the time to think about maybe some things that have crossed their boundaries or things they don't like, because most of the time kids are not taking time to think through that. And so these lessons, again, are giving kids the core skills to say, I deserve respect. Something I don't even know if I knew as a kid, right? I have the right to be safe. What in this situation feels unsafe to me? How can I choose what to do from here? And how do I get help? It's just giving them another outlet to think through the things that are okay and aren't okay. And also giving them permission to say, that's never going to be okay with me. Let's not do that. I really don't like that. Okay, so again, back to talking about parent piece to this on the next slide, we talk about what are the protective factors. And research has shown if families and if children have these factors in place, or parents have these factors, they're going to be less likely to experience trauma. Maybe that's abuse, maybe that's other traumas that happen in life. So like neglect or not having enough food or things like that. So if we see that a parent has resilience, if you are modeling that for your child, that when you get knocked down, you're going to get back up. We're going to try again. We're going to do this, right? That's a protective factor for our children. Families having social connections, knowing that you have people you can reach out to, that if you need something at the last minute, if you need someone to watch your child, that you have a friend who can do that. Or if you can't get off work to go pick your child up, right? All those social connections. And when we're down, who's helping us get back up? Concrete support. So we know if a family has all the basic needs, food, jobs, shelter, they're going to be more likely to be protected as a family, and their child is going to be more likely to be successful in life and not have trauma, because they're going to have time, because all those other needs are okay, to spend time together and to do to talk to each other and get into what's going on, and education and safety, making sure your kids are safe. And then knowledge of parenting and child development, just knowing what a child should be doing at what age, what they're going through emotionally, socially at different ages, and being able to know that and talk to your children and be watching. So we know that we don't expect a 6-month-old baby to be able to walk, right? So we're not pushing that on our children. So just having basic knowledge of their development makes parenting so much easier, and makes sure that our children are protected. And then the social and emotional competence of children. If we talk to them, kind of like what some of our lessons delve into, which is, hey, emotions are okay. And there's also ways that we can manage those when they feel out of control. That is a really hard thing to teach as parents. But giving that language, understanding, hey, how can we be emotionally safe? How can we be emotionally sound, socially safe? And so talking to children about that and knowing that as parents helps protect our kids. All right, so the next slide. This is something I talk to parents a lot about, and it comes straight from our curriculum. So I do a webinar called Keeping Children Safe. And this is a part of that. And it's similar to what our superheroes talk about and what our puppets talk about with your children when they get this curriculum. But it's put to different words, and it's stuff even as parents we need to remember, right? So know what is safe. Be assertive. We can model that as parents. If we're not modeling assertiveness, then our kids may not be picking up on that. So dealing with situations that are hard in a respectful way, respecting ourselves and others. So I don't know if I even went into that completely, but it's things like if someone says something unkind to you, you can have the aggressive responses, which is yelling back at them or even getting aggressive physically. You can have the passive response, which is you slump, you don't really look them in the eye, and you just say, okay, that's okay. And you just walk away. Or you can have the assertive response, which you're teaching your children and they're getting at school, which is you can look at someone in the eyes and you can express how that made you feel, how you're not okay with it. And you can still be respectful to them, right? And ideally, and what we're teaching our children is that ideally the person who you're talking to is going to understand and be respectful back and say, I didn't even realize that was what I was doing. I shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry. And so when a whole community gets these pieces in place, just like a puzzle, then we're more likely to be assertive and have that reciprocated in respect. So respecting each other. And you can tell a trusted adult, always talking to your children about, I'm a safe place. If something happens, you feel unsafe, tell a trusted adult. Who are the other adults in your life that you can trust, right? So your teacher, or maybe it's a grandparent. These are the people we know that are trustworthy. And that means they don't hurt us. That means when we say something to them, it is safe. Keep telling until you get the help you need. Often it can happen where a child says something and someone doesn't believe them, right? We don't want that to happen. We want to make sure we're getting help and that it's never their fault. All right, so next slide. This is what I was talking about earlier. So we know adverse childhood experiences, the more we have, the more they lead to other things in life. So here's some ideas of what an adverse childhood experience might be. Abuse, which we are trying to prevent with Stand Strong, Stay Safe and giving kids skills to get out of those situations. Neglect or household dysfunction. And if we're honest, most of us have probably had something that is an adverse childhood experience, right? And the next slide shows that study was over many, many years into adulthood. They showed what happens to children who have some of those experiences. And it's often these things, behavior, they are more sedentary. They don't do physical activity. There might be smoking, alcoholism, drug use, all the things that we know come along with trying to heal something maybe that was going on. The physical and mental, there's obesity, diabetes, depression, suicide. You can read these. So many physical things that can happen when we've had an adverse childhood experience. So that's what Stand Strong, Stay Safe is trying to prevent. We're trying to prevent that from happening. So child abuse, who, where, why? You can go to the next slide. I'm going to try to get through some of this a little faster to make sure we have time for questions. So sometimes we as parents just aren't aware of who, where, why abuse could happen. We're hoping it's not happening. We wish we could all live in a bubble, right, of safety, but it does happen. It is out there. So who abuses kids? Research shows that it is mostly by someone they know. Where does it happen? That's the thing. There's not a where. It can happen anywhere. Even with our best intentions as parents, it can still happen at home, school, daycare, even places of worship, sporting activities, places that we want to believe are safe. And so that's why curriculum like Stand Strong, Stay Safe is so important, because we cannot be with our children 24/7. As much as we would love that, we cannot always be right there to protect them. So we're going to give them the skills to protect themselves. Even if it should be a safe situation, and sadly it isn't, they can protect themselves and they can get help. Why would someone abuse kids? There's all kinds of different reasoning, right? Mental health issues, drug, alcohol abuse, a history of abuse, being abused, maybe that lack of knowledge of child development or lack of emotional control. Again, so many reasons out there. Okay, our next slide. These are the definitions of abuse, and I'm sure a lot of you have had these or know about them. So we talk a little bit about these in the curriculum, but it's always in kid-friendly terms, right? So abuse is when someone with more power intentionally crosses your boundaries. And we talk about that, especially with our older elementary, the crossing the boundaries intentionally and the power dynamic. And then there's the physical, the sexual, emotional, and bullying, which leaving marks, seeing, touching private parts when a child does not need help. We're very clear with that in early childhood that sometimes a child needs help, right? When a baby gets a diaper change, they need help. So Sometimes that's okay, but it's never okay if you don't need help. And it's never, never a secret. Emotional abuse, belittling words, actions, bullying, could be physical or emotional. Usually there's a power dynamic of some sort. Age, maybe height, just a power dynamic of one child using that power against another. All right, so next slide. So here's some tips that we tell parents because, as I said, we want to be prepared. We don't want to be reactive. We want to be proactive. We want to prevent. So we anticipate potential dangers. We talk to our children about maybe something that could happen. I talk to my daughter often about, hey, what if this situation happened? What would you do? Just like we do with anything else in life, right? Hey, when you're at soccer, if you see the soccer ball coming, what are you going to do? Let's go outside and practice. You can practice safety. We're practicing it in schools. Anticipate potential dangers, plan, communicate, talking to your children about it, talking about assertiveness, showing those skills, and then practicing with your children. Think through what children could do in a potentially dangerous situation. And that's exactly what these lessons are doing. They're giving children time to think, what are my boundaries? What if this happened? What would I do? So that if a moment came up, they're not stuck and they're not frozen, right? We want to get rid of the flee or freeze or fight. We want it to be that they have thought through, they have information available, and they can get help. So we're going to practice, practice, practice. And that's something you can do at home as well. All right. So the next one. So talking about grooming it's a huge topic with parents. So just a few warning signs. We won't get into this deeply. We have a whole webinar on that with keeping children safe. But some red flags just to be aware of. If you're around someone and your child and that adult seems more interested in the child than the parents, or shows unusually childish behavior, giving gifts to children, regularly singling a child out. And this next one is particularly important. Telling the child to keep secrets from other parents or from parents or adults. That is never safe. We should never be okay with someone telling our child to keep a secret, right? Finding ways to spend time alone, using inappropriate words and images, or talking about private parts, or touching the child in a way that crosses the child's boundaries. Again, so important that we're talking to kids about boundaries and knowing, hey, I may not be okay with a hug, and that's okay. And I'm not okay when someone gets close to me and it makes me feel uncomfortable. All right, so those are some warning signs of grooming. Again, we have a whole webinar on that. And really important, this can be responding to abuse or just trauma or bullying. This is how we respond as parents. We want to make sure that we are looking out for changes in our child. We deal with our own emotions so that when they tell us, we don't have a shocked face or an angry, we're just listening. It's about what they do, what they need to tell us. We can't undo what has happened. And when your child shares, listen, get on their level, have empathy, and validate what they're saying, that it seems like you're angry. Let's talk about that. And it's okay to be angry. And then thank them that they're so brave. A child who shares something, that is so brave. And then support them, however that looks. Physically, you can ask them, do you want a hug, or just sit by them? And this is, again, for our children or children in our lives. Anytime we're around kids, we do these things. And then seek help and report if needed. All right, next slide. Again, when you're listening to your child, and this goes for anything that they want to tell you, remove distractions. For me, that can be really hard sometimes. And I have to remember, put down the phone, listen to what my child is saying, believe them, and believe their emotions, validate that, and then use my face and body, right? So I'm going to get close. I want to listen. I want to make sure I'm really understanding. And maybe it's understanding what's going on underneath, not just what they're telling me. And providing feedback. Wow, that's so brave of you to tell me. Or wow, you handled that really assertively. That's really great. All right. And again, we just talked about that on the other slide. When do we report? Anytime we suspect abuse. It doesn't have to be our own children. It can be anyone. If we see something, we can report, we can call. There's a hotline. There's also a way to report online. And us professionals, we're going to report within 48 hours. And everyone must report in a reasonable amount of time, because we know that the sooner we report and the sooner there's help, the less likely for those effects to be long-term. All right. I think this is pretty much the end. Oh, yay. I did have all the resources. So we have some resources for you all to look at. There may be a way, I don't know if we could put that on a chat or however you all want to maybe send that out to parents. This is some of the links that I used. And a lot of these are our ChildBuilders website, childbuilders.org. We have a lot of information on there, and we would love to chat with you all. I think the last slide is my email address, I believe, maybe. And if you all have any further comments or needs, questions, you can always reach out to us. We'd love to have you at another webinar. We'd love to talk to you more. And so I didn't know if there was any questions, or if Miss Anna or Amber or anybody wanted to chime in with any Alvin specific.
So I'll jump in real quick, and then I would love to open the floor for any questions. But just to share with parents, Priscilla, you gave some just fantastic and valuable information, not just on the curriculum, but just in general about how parents and how we can work at home with our kids and helping to keep them safe. So just thank you for that. Parents, so that you're aware, because there are a couple of lessons within this curriculum that specifically pertain to safety against abuse, we are sending out a consent form for parents to sign, and that will be coming from your child's elementary campus. So that'll be a direct letter sent home. We have English and Spanish versions of it. It'll be from the campus, and it'll be to provide consent for your child to participate in those lessons, particularly pertaining to abuse. Again, like Priscilla mentioned, everything is in child-friendly language. We have previewed the curriculum, and also you as parents have rights to be able to see the curriculum as well. And so if that's something you're kind of on the fence about giving the consent piece, let your school counselor know, and that's something that we can absolutely preview for you to help make that decision. But that's such important information. We just want to encourage you and any of your other parent friends to go ahead and complete that consent form so that we can begin to give your children skills to help them stay safe. And so if you have any questions right now, while we have Priscilla, we're very happy to help answer those. I am going to stop recording though.